House reporter Aaron Navarro. We see him now on the White House South Lawn. What's happening behind you, Aaron, and how significant is this moment for President Trump?
Yeah, Errol, if you can hear, the president's Marine Band is playing in anticipation of the president to make remarks and sign what he has called One Big Beautiful Bill, a big legislative win for the White House to get their spending and agenda through Congress, especially when it comes to extending the tax cuts that he had in 2017 and adding $120 billion to immigration enforcement, particularly the building of the southern border wall, as well as hiring for more ICE agents. This has been something that this past week, especially senior administration officials tell us that President Trump has really been working the phones, especially on Wednesday, to convince some of those holdouts in terms of Republicans in Congress to support the bill. He eventually got that when the House passed the bill this past Thursday.
And while you mentioned some of the increased spending in some areas of the government, where will this bill make significant cuts that some of our viewers will likely see?
Yeah, we're going to see tighter requirements for those looking to be eligible for Medicaid, Medicare. The Congressional Budget Office estimates that over 12 million over the next decade could be without health insurance because of these tighter requirements. We're also expecting to see funding in some ways for rural hospitals to decrease substantially as well as tighter requirements for SNAP or food stamps. So food assistance programs could see a bigger cut. Now, in terms of what Republicans, the administration, have been touting, it is primarily the border funding as well as those tax cuts, which they argue will help the middle class in terms of having a higher limit in terms of state and local deductions. But opponents of this bill, including Democrats in Congress, have been pointing to these tax cuts helping the higher class Americans the most as well.
Now, the president wants to make a real display of this signing of the bill. You've got it happening during a 4th of July ceremony at the White House. This was his self-imposed deadline. And I understand there will also be some flyovers as he signs this to really give it a dramatic effect. Explain to our viewers why that's significant.
Yeah, the president said to reporters yesterday that as he's expected to sign this bill on the White House South Lawn, he's expecting a flyover of B-2 Spirit planes, fighter jets, above the White House as he signs that bill. And these are the same types of aircraft that were used in American strikes on Iranian nuclear sites just a couple weeks ago. We understand that the president also met with some of those pilots and other crew that were on those B-2s at the White House in a closed private meeting earlier today. So he's certainly playing that aspect of it all, as well as you mentioned, that arbitrary July 4th deadline. That has been something that earlier this week that President Trump emphasized that he really wanted Republicans in Congress to get this bill to his desk by, and they seem to have gotten that wish as he'll be signing it in a couple, in the next hour or so.
Yeah, and we have been speaking with some both Republican and Democratic strategists who both believe that this bill is what Republicans and Democrats will be running on next year during the midterm elections, depending on if they think that it will encourage their base to get out and vote. And as we stand by for this to happen, Aaron, can you just explain to us what is about to happen? Give us kind of a TikTok, a play-by-play of the president who is scheduled to come out behind you and sign this bill.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, in the next hour or so, we'll see the president come out, give remarks as he'll be joined by some of his cabinet members, some of the congressional supporters that have helped, pass this bill, thinking of House Speaker Mike Johnson, Senate Majority Leader John Thune, who are expected to be with the president, as he'll sign this bill, make remarks here to the families of folks in the military, as this has been dubbed as a military family picnic. And the president will sign this bill. The flyover will happen. And then we're expected to see the president later on watch the fireworks from the White House later this evening before departing to Bedminster in New Jersey, where he will be for the weekend.
All right, Aaron Navarro is there baking in the sun. Just to be transparent, it's about 86 degrees in the nation's capital. So Aaron is really braving the heat for us by keeping his jacket on and keeping us updated. The president's scheduled to appear, I believe, momentarily. So Aaron, if you'll indulge us, I just want to throw some more questions at you, since this bill will have a massive impact on the lives of Americans for such a long time. You mentioned kind of the socioeconomic scale. For lower income Americans, what does this bill mean? And for the wealthy, what changes might they see?
Yeah, for the wealthy, they remain to see those tax cuts that he passed in 2017 that really benefit them. Those will continue. And the Trump administration, the president, have been arguing, should this bill not pass and should his tax cuts that he passed in 2017 expire, you could have seen a big tax hike. They, of course, are not expecting to see that, given that the, quote, one big beautiful bill has passed. But for lower income Americans, particularly when it comes to Medicaid, the federal spending and money contributed to the Medicaid system will decrease, putting more of an onus on the states, which will vary from state to state, Republican to Democratic state, as well as the cuts to rural hospitals and food stamps. That seems to be where the biggest impact could be for those lower class Americans, which is in part why you're seeing Democrats really signal that this is going to be the part of the bill that they campaign heavily on going into the 2026 congressional midterms.
And Aaron, we just received an update that we expect the president to exit the White House momentarily, and we want to bring that to our viewers as it happens. As he signs this bill, there will be a CBS News special report, so we want our viewers to stay close for that as well. We'll break away when he does begin to make remarks, but Aaron, based on what you've just laid out, this bill could be quite divisive if Americans in rural parts of the country, even if they are Republican counties or states, they could see a kind of difficult moment as some Medicaid funding is cut and states then have to fill in the gap. This could be challenging for many people who have health issues and don't have much money.
Yeah, and what makes this, at least politically interesting is some of those impacts on Medicaid, Medicare will happen after the 2026 midterm elections. In terms of the Trump administration, they argue that they are helping lower class Americans with the provisions in this bill when it comes to reducing greatly or eliminating taxes on tips, on overtime, on Social Security, in terms of federal taxes on those things. So that has been the argument on how they are helping some of those lower class Americans. But given the timeline of this bill, we might not know the full ramifications of those cuts on Medicaid, Medicare until after the 2026 elections. Yeah,
lower income Americans certainly will feel some of this. And what about for businesses? What about, we talked about defense spending at the border. What are some other interesting aspects of the bill that we are discovering? I mean, it is hundreds upon hundreds of pages long, I think 900 pages in total.
Yeah, around 900. One of the interesting things I saw in this bill was a permanent increase to the child tax credit to about $2,200. That has been a priority actually during the past administration, during former President Biden. That is something that is tucked into this bill as well. And really, it is the construction, as you mentioned, for that border wall. That is a long priority for this president. It's something he used in his 2016 campaign. And just the drastic increase of $120 billion to ICE, to immigration enforcement, is something that we have not seen in either President Trump's first term or President Biden's term. So that'll really speed up, potentially really amplify and elevate this mission that the administration has to scale up their deportations, their detainments of undocumented migrants. There have been calls for more, spaces to hold detained migrants, and we've seen some of that earlier this week with what is known as, quote, Alligator Alcatraz in South Florida. So this is something that really advances the president's priorities, not only since, he started the second term, but also on the campaign trail in 2024. That's how this White House has been portraying this bill, that it is fulfilling a lot of the promises that voters elected him to.
All right, Aaron Navarro is there live on the hot White House South Lawn during an Independence Day event. We expect President Trump to exit and speak on the balcony momentarily. When that happens, Aaron, we'll bring it to our viewers live. So please stay close for us. And as I just mentioned, as soon as the president speaks, we will bring this to you live. And when he actually signs this bill into law, the moment it becomes the law of the land, we'll bring you a CBS News special report. So stay close. Now to other big stories. Russia bombarded Ukraine overnight in the largest aerial attack of the war so far. Russia's Air Force says it launched 550 missiles and drones at Ukrainian territory. Authorities say at least one person was killed and dozens injured. Paul Adams, with our partners at the BBC, has more.
Well, the people of Kiev are clearing up after a pretty rough night. It wasn't the most deadly night. week or two ago, we saw more than 20 people killed in a single night of aerial attacks. But it was a very, very widespread, and it did have the largest number of drones so far, more than 530. It is an ongoing pattern, and one that leaves the Ukrainians convinced that, frankly, Mr. Putin is not interested in any kind of diplomatic dialogue, something that the Kremlin spokesman Dmitry Peskov this morning rather indicated that the Russians were not pursuing that path either. He said that for the moment diplomacy wasn't really working. Of course, we've had this flurry of phone conversations this week involving Donald Trump and Vladimir Putin, involving Emmanuel Macron and Vladimir Putin, but none of it seems to amount to a hill of beans at the moment. Meanwhile, you've got the British and the French announcing that next week they will be holding a meeting at which they are going to discuss how to strengthen Ukraine's defences, how to improve its military, how to prepare for some kind of foreign force to come here to Ukraine in the event of a ceasefire, something that frankly seems a very, very remote prospect at the moment. So for Ukraine's European allies, if not the United States, all the talk is of how to strengthen Ukraine in the face of ongoing Russian attacks.
All right, Paul Adams, thank you for that in Kyiv. We are following breaking news for you at this moment. There's been massive flooding in Kerr County, Texas. Several people have been killed, and according to new information that we have, more than 20 children at a summer camp are currently missing. The state's lieutenant governor has just shared the latest on this deadly flooding. Let's listen.
Drones, 9 rescue teams, swimmers in the water, rescuing adults and children out of trees. We have 400 to 500 people on the ground from all of our various units, and Freeman Martin, our director of DPS, can talk about the various units who are there. For the parents who are waiting, particularly that had children in Camp Mystic. Camp Mystic is a camp that has over 750 kids. Right now, there are 20-some that aren't accounted for. That does not mean they've been lost. They could be in a tree. They could be out of communication. We're praying for all of those missing to be found alive. We're doing everything we can to get in there. We have the game wardens. You were the colonel of the game wardens, Pete, walking in by foot, driving, dropping in the water, whatever we can do to find everyone we can. That camp is divided into 2 banks. For those of you, parents who have children at Camp Mystic, this is a notice they sent out. They know all of the names of the parents, all the email addresses, all the phone calls, all the cell numbers so they can make the calls. Their following message: we have sustained catastrophic level of flooding. We have no power, water, or Wi-Fi. All Cypress Lake campers are accounted for. So if your child was in Cypress Lake, that camp is divided into certain areas. All Cypress Lake campers are accounted for. All campers on Senior Hill are accounted for. If your daughter is not accounted for,
all right, we now want to jump over to CBS News correspondent Jason Allen, who is in Kerrville. Jason, the lieutenant governor there, saying more than 20 children missing from a summer camp. We heard the mayor of Kerrville come to tears earlier, telling people to pray for the missing. What are you seeing? What are you hearing?
Errol, we are standing at a checkpoint. This is the road that would lead to where those summer camps are located. And as the lieutenant governor was saying, there are a number of them on both sides of the banks of the Guadalupe River. The river just over here, so on the left of the street as we look down the street, that's where the river sits and where it's normally down in its banks, but then came up 20 feet or more within a matter of minutes this morning. Now, what you may see even in the shot as we're here is more equipment coming in. Here comes somebody with a tractor on the back. We have seen in the last few minutes trucks coming in, state trucks with boats on them. That's a sign that they're still looking. Sometimes in these scenarios, we see them coming out, the boats on them. In this case, they are still going in. We also still have a number of helicopters that have been going out above us. They are staged just down the road from where we are. So they are still running these searches up and down the Guadalupe River. So there are a few camps down there. He mentioned one specifically. It's good news that they're not saying that there are children unaccounted for at the other camps. And then beyond that, Errol, there are a number of people and businesses that are located up and down this river. There are campgrounds, a lot of RV places too. Some people in RVs we know were able to drive away. We have a crew down there further who has seen some destroyed RVs as well. So this search and rescue that is currently ongoing here in Texas goes beyond, Errol, those kids at that summer camp.
Wow, really remarkable, Jason. And the mayor saying that this storm came in so quickly and the flooding came in overnight while many were sleeping. We'll certainly stay close to your reporting tonight and through the weekend for updates. Thank you very much. Right, and we know that many of you at this moment may be traveling for your July 4th holiday weekend. You can take CBS News 24/7 wherever you. All right, a gas station explosion rattles Rome, leaves dozens injured. What officials say may have caused that blast. Plus, we're breaking down how President Trump's tax break and spending bill may impact your life. A look at what this means for the economy next on CBS News 24/7.
What happens when reporters take you inside the story?
I've been asking for over a year and a half for access into this place, and this is the first time we're getting it.
You get the all-new CBS Evening News every weeknight.
This is CBS.
This is NCIS. You put on that uniform, you agree to protect the person next to you, no matter what. Welcome to Australia.
Match made in heaven.
Watch out! Are you hungry? Shout you a crock burger?
NCIS Sydney. All episodes now streaming on Paramount Plus. Returns CBS Full.
I'm Erin Moriarty of 48 Hours, and of all the cases I've covered, this is the one that troubles me most. Listen to Murder in the Orange Grove, the troubled case against Carsley Green, wherever you get your podcasts.
Be in the know, even when you're on the go, with the CBS Mornings podcast.
Some news you can use at the grocery store.
Better mornings start better days.
When you look good, feel good, you do good. That's right.
Listen to CBS Mornings on the go on Apple Podcasts.
What happens when the world's best journalists come together?
Write a prescription for the healing of America.
We're retired and this is our paradise.
Now it's gone.
You get the stories of America every night. You get the all-new CBS Evening News every weeknight.
I can only describe it as evil.
Follow and listen to Train to Kill, The Dog Trainer, The Heiress, and The Bodyguard on the free Odyssey app or wherever you get your podcasts.
My job can get dangerous sometimes, but I'm very good at what I do. I know you're scared. I'm here to help.
They said you were the best.
Your daughter hired me to bring you home. I made her promise I would never stop looking.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
You hear about the reward?
Come in.
Okay.
Tracker. All episodes now streaming on Paramount Plus and returning CBS Fall.
A gas station explosion in Rome Friday injured dozens of people, including several first responders. Just look at the aftermath there. CBS News foreign correspondent Chris Livesay brings us details from near the scene.
So I'm walking through the neighborhood that was struck by this massive explosion this morning when a truck reportedly backed into a gas line and triggered 2 explosions. In fact, those explosions took place right behind me, nearby this school. There would have been hundreds of school children here if this weren't summer vacation right now. In fact, just over this way, there's a rec center as well, where locals tell me that hundreds of kids were about to show up at the swimming pool. But because it happened so early this morning, there weren't any people there. That doesn't change the fact that dozens of people were injured in this blast. So far, we're told that 2 people are on life support. In fact, police are also talking about several people suffering from what's known as blast lung. That's the kind of thing you hear about in war zones. It's when there's a huge displacement of oxygen when an explosion takes place, and it can lead to an inflammation or even...
This is a CBS News special report. I'm Jerika Duncan. President Trump is about to sign what he calls the One Big Beautiful Bill Act into law. The tax and spending cut bill passed the House yesterday. The president is speaking to a crowd on the South Lawn filled with families from Congress and the military. Let's listen in.
Dignity. We have something that's happened miraculously so fast. You know that our military now is the most sought-after job there's ever been, serving in our military. 1 year ago, people didn't want to join our military. They didn't want to join our police or firefighters. They didn't want to join anything having to do with our country. And now, as you probably know, the enlistment is at an all-time record. We're packed. We're full. And I just think that's so important because that was so sad 1 year ago when I heard those statistics. We had a different president, but nobody wanted to join, and now we're at a record. And I will say that I just left NATO, where we had a tremendous experience. They've agreed to put up over $1 trillion a year. They went from less than 2% to 5%, and nobody thought that was possible. And they told me very strongly, the leaders of a big part of the world, very respected people all, they told me that, 1 year ago your country was dead, and now you have the hottest country anywhere in the world. So that's the way it is, and that's the way we like it. And it's only going to get hotter, I promise you that. After that spectacular display of American power, let me just say that God bless the United States military, and God bless the USA. God bless the USA. And to all Americans, I want to wish you a very happy Independence Day, happy 4th of July. This is going to be something special. This spirit in this country, we haven't seen anything like it in many, many years and decades. Let me also express our gratitude to our magnificent First Lady. She worked very hard to make this all work. We have a fireworks display about 9 o'clock tonight. I hope you're all going to be around and watch it. I know our congressmen and our senators who are standing right here, so many of them, they did such a great job. They're going to be here. I guarantee you, they're not leaving. They're not leaving. Thanks as well to the National Park Service, the USO, and countless friends and distinguished guests. We have so many people in the audience that have so much to do with the success of our country. We've, I think, had probably the most successful almost 6 months as a president and the presidency. I think they're saying it was the best 6 months, and I know for a fact they're saying the last 2 weeks there has never been anything like it as far as winning. So as you know, 2 weeks ago, our incredible Air Force pilots conducted one of the most successful military strikes in all of history, Operation Midnight Hammer, and that's exactly what it was. It was a hammer. This evening, we're honored to be joined by 150 airmen and their families from Whiteman Air Force Base in Missouri, home of the B-2 bomber. And we've kept them a little bit on guard. We kept them a little bit, let's be a little bit quiet about it. But if you want to raise your hand very quickly, raise your hand, because you people are just incredible. They don't want to be in disguise. You know, they say, we don't have to do that. They're looking at us like we're a bunch of babies. We don't have to be in disguise. We saw all those hands go up. Thank you very much. We owe you everything. Great job. Incredible. Just flawless. One of the most flawless military campaigns in the history of our country. If you remember years ago, they had helicopters crashing into each other. It was a disaster. The hostages in Iran. And we had just the opposite. We didn't have any crashes. We didn't lose any planes. We didn't lose anybody. Those beautiful planes that you saw were totally stealth. They flew right over the center of a very hostile country, and they never even saw it coming. And then they said, skedaddle. They dropped the bombs. They said, skedaddle. And that big sucker turned over like this on its side, and it got out of there. Well, I'll tell you what, how they do that, but they can do it. I asked our great General Kane, how do they do that? Do they really love doing that? Look at them, they're all laughing. And they said, do they really like doing it, sir? They can't wait. Better you than me. That's all I can say. It was a flawless mission. Every single bomb hit, and it was total obliteration, total obliteration. Now, even the fake news is admitting that. They hated to admit it, but they had no choice. That was an incredible thing, and these heroic pilots showed our enemies what it means to fly, fight, and win. To every service member who supported that mission, and we have many of them here. We've made we've made you proud by supporting, but you've made us even prouder by having the courage to get in those gorgeous machines and fly through the roughest airspace anywhere in the world. And we salute you, and we honor you. Thank you very much for being here. Thank you. And we're also honored and delighted to be joined by hundreds of service members and military families. Those families are the best we have, from all across the U.S. Armed Forces, Army, Navy, Air Force, Space Force. I love the Space Force. You know why? Because we're the ones that did it. It's turned out to be a very invaluable force, actually. The Coast Guard and the Marines are incredible people. On behalf of our entire nation, this 4th of July, we thank you for keeping America safe, strong, sovereign, and free. Thank you very much for being here. Great honor. And stick around for the fireworks. And our country's had so much to celebrate this Independence Day. As we enter our 249th year, America is winning, winning, winning like never before. We're not, I'll tell you, we're in a category now that's where we've wanted to be for a long time. We suffered with 4 horrible years of embarrassment. Afghanistan may be the most embarrassing moment in the history of our country. We're never going to let a thing like that happen again. Trillions of dollars are pouring into the United States for investment purposes. Almost $15 trillion. There's never been anything like it. There's never been anything even close. The stock market's at an all-time high. Jobs are at an all-time high. Everything's at an all-time high, and we're going to keep it that way. We have the greatest country in the world, and we're back. We're back like nobody thought possible this quickly. I thought it would take maybe a year, maybe 2 years, maybe even 3. And we did it in less than 6 months. We are back and strong. We've restored American strength and deterrence on the world stage. We're respected again. The world is respecting us again. When we did NATO, those leaders came up to me and they said, you know what, we're going to go to a new level of spending because you're requesting it, sir. They didn't talk to you last president like that, I can tell you. They didn't spend any money. They didn't spend anything. In a few moments, we're going to make official the greatest victory yet when I signed the one big, beautiful bill. And before I start, I want to tell you that I've never seen people so happy in our country because of that, because so many different groups of people are being taken care of, the military and civilians of all types, jobs of all types. We're adding things like the biggest tax cut in the history of our country, child tax credits. So many things are being added that we wouldn't even have time to discuss them. When we were doing it, John Thune and Mike Johnson right there. I see Mike. What a job they've done. What a job they've done. But you know, it was supposed to be in 3, 4, 5, 6, or 7 different bills. And I was on one of the fake news shows, and I said, let's do it in one beautiful, big, we want one big, beautiful bill. I said that to this newscaster, and I think a lot of the congressmen and senators were watching, and they said, let's name the bill that, the one big, beautiful bill. And that's what we did. And what we've done is put everything into one bill. It's never happened before. It's the biggest bill of its type in history. We've never had anything like that before. Nothing like that they thought would be possible to get passed. And actually, I liked it because we had so much in there that no matter who you are, there was something in that bill that would make your congressman or your senator or your congresswoman, much more importantly, raise their hand and support, right, Lisa? So that was something, and it was really something special. So the American people gave us a historic mandate in November. We won everything. We won the swing states, all 7 swing states. We won every one. That rarely happens. We won the popular vote. We won the districts, 2,750 to 505. That's why when you look at a map, it's all red, a little blue on each end, but it's all red. And by the way, red means Republican, just in case. But we made promises, and it's really promises made, promises kept, and we've kept them. This is a triumph of democracy on the birthday of democracy. And I have to say that the people are happy. They're happy. And I listened to a broadcast, and I read a couple of articles. They have the Democrats, they should have voted for it. They didn't vote for tax cuts. They didn't vote for taking care of people. They didn't vote, not one vote. And we knew that because their hatred of either the country or me or both is so great. They didn't vote at all, and it's terrible. But I just have to say, they have a routine. It's terrible, they say. Terrible, terrible. You saw that guy standing up for hours yesterday. He didn't know what he was even doing there. I say, when's he sitting down? He had a towel. He's wiping his face. That's not too elegant. But what is he? I said, what is he doing for so long? And he couldn't criticize the bill. He was criticizing everyone else and everything else. So they've developed, and this is according to the news media, they've developed a standard line, and we can't let them get away with it. Oh, it's dangerous. Oh, everybody's going to die. It's actually just the opposite. Everybody's going to live. This is just the opposite. And I just want you to know, if you see anything negative put out by Democrats, it's all a con job. And they said, and they compared it to just like the con job of Russia, 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 and all of the other things they did. The 51 intelligence agents said, and the laptop from hell, it came from Russia, they said. No, it didn't come. A lot of things come from Russia. That didn't come from Russia. And it was all proven out to be a fake job, and that's what they're doing with this. So we just have to look forward, fellas, look forward and just say what it is, because it's the most popular bill ever signed in the history of our country. Whether you're military or anybody else, this is the most popular bill ever signed. And it includes the largest tax cut in American history, the largest spending cut, $1.7 trillion, and yet you won't even notice it. Just waste, fraud, and abuse in American history. So you have the biggest tax cut, the biggest spending cut, the largest border security investment in American history. We want to have strong borders, and the only thing is we want to have great elections, too. You need strong borders and elections, and my people have promised me that we're going to go into elections, and we're going to make sure they're not rigged, that they're not sullied. We're going to make sure that the elections are going to be fair. You need 2 things. You need strong borders, and you need fair elections. And we're going to make sure on the elections also. And our armed forces are one of the most vital military modernizations of all time. It will take place. So we rebuilt our military in our first term. And now we're going to modernize and remodernize our military, including building a great golden dome all over our land, so that if they get nasty with us, it's going to be knocked down. It's going to make any of the golden domes, they call them the iron domes, we're calling ours the golden dome, because we did the iron domes, and we do sort of everything, if you want to know the truth, but this blows it away. We're going to keep you safe. I want to thank every member of the House and Senate who worked to get this bill on my desk, and many of them are here, and I'm not going to mention all their names because we'll be standing here, but I have to mention a few. And especially I want to thank Vice President J.D. Vance, who's been fantastic. Secretary of State Marco Rubio, who's been incredible. We have somebody that is, it was a passion. I think he actually loved it. It wasn't easy, but he loved it. Speaker of the House, Mike Johnson, who's right here. Speaker, thank you very much. What a job, and he worked so closely with the Senate Majority Leader, John Thune, who's a fantastic guy. And those two are a team that is not going to be beat. When you look at them and you look at their counterparts on the other side, it's not even close. I want to thank both of you people for doing an incredible job. Thank you very much, John and Mike. House Majority Leader Steve Scalise, a brave man. Steve, you know, he suffered a tragedy a number of years ago. I was at his hospital bedside that night with Melania, with our First Lady, and he had no chance. The doctor said he has very little chance, and you look better today than you did then. He didn't look particularly good that night, I will say. But I learned one thing, his beautiful wife loved him. She was a disaster, right? I told him, I said, Steve, I can only tell you one thing. I was with your family and I was with your wife, and your wife was devastated. She loves you. I've seen a lot of wives that, you know, they don't seem to be so concerned in those situations. That's the kind of wife you don't want. But you have a great, beautiful wife who was really there, and you really have done. You're a very brave guy, and Mike and John and everybody that's standing with you knows it. Thank you very much. I really appreciate it. House Majority Whip, this is a guy who's great. When I have a problem, I call him up, and he gets it done. He's a tough cookie. I don't know why he's not the governor of Minnesota. He comes from Minnesota. He's like, look, he goes, no, I don't want to run for governor. You know, come to think of it, I think that's a good idea. You would win so easily. The guy is terrible. You would win. You just have to take a look at that handsome face of yours, and you'd win. Tom Emmer, everybody. He did a great job. I think you should consider that, although we don't want to lose him, do we? We don't want to. Let's say we are. I think say we are. What a job you did. And Senate Majority Whip John Barrasso, who's incredible. Senate Finance Chairman Mike Crapo. Thank you, Mike. What a job. What a job. He knows that tax stuff. Him and Jason, they really know their stuff. Senate Budget Committee Chairman Lindsey Graham.
So you were listening to President Donald Trump thank those who helped him get the big, beautiful bill across the finish line. He is getting ready to sign the bill at any moment. Want to go to Scott McFarland at the White House. Yesterday, President Trump said, quote, I think I have more power now after the bill's passage. Scott, just talk to us about how significant this victory is for his administration. I mean, you heard him just a moment ago talk about trillions of investment, jobs at an all-time high. As far as the bill is concerned, saying more money for the military, there's money for civilians of all types, child tax credits, biggest bill of any type in history. What is that all about?
These are extended remarks, Jerika, because the president is trying to emphasize that this is a victory. He is trying to declare a victory for the country and for his party. And he really overcame some hurdles to get this thing passed. There were dissenting voices inside the Republican Party, some who thought this spirals the deficit further. Huge debt concerns. Others said this risks cutting Medicaid to people who need it. In fact, the critics of this bill say this could cost Medicaid and nutritional assistance to millions of Americans. So it's been controversial, but he got it through on a party line vote against some odds. A few things he mentioned during these remarks. He called it the most popular bill ever signed. That's kind of the issue here. It is not polled well. There's no sense the country has galvanized behind this bill or knows much about it. He's going to take this signing ceremony and try to amplify the bill, trying to make it popular. But tell you this, Jerika, no matter what, this signing ceremony you're about to see, it's going to get clipped and used by both parties. Republicans think this is a win. Democrats think this is a political pariah they can mechanize in the 2026 midterms.
Scott, I want to go now.
What happens when you get conversation over conflict?
I think they've taught me to have grace and compassion.
When we follow the human side of the headline.
I'm not asking that we ignore disability, rather that we do not ignore ability.
When news takes you where the story happens.
We've just crossed into Lebanon.
When the world's best journalists come together to cover your world, you get the all-new CBS Evening News every weeknight. It's the most popular F word in Washington, fraud.
Is it true that the Social Security number of just about every single American is available for sale on the dark web?
An eye-opening 60 Minutes report.
That's chilling.
It's time for 60 Minutes.
Your life is still a mystery.
When your gut tells you something fishy's going on, there's almost all.
To people as well that many of these tax provisions in particular will likely take effect as soon as this year, but some of those changes to Medicaid and food assistance programs, like implementing those new work requirements, will be phased in the coming years. Jerika.
He came down hard on Democrats and said that those who didn't vote for him had a hatred for the country or me or both. There seems to be issues with any type of criticism, and as you mentioned, that $3.4 trillion that it could add to the deficit. Talk about the expectation of how this could affect Republicans in the next year's midterms.
Well, I think this bill and this legislation will be a point of litigation, not only for Republicans, but also for Democrats, because clearly they see the impact of this bill differently. You know, you heard the president there kind of take aim at Democrats, suggesting that they are, not being upfront with respect to this package, suggesting people are going to die. And you heard him say, well, I think people are going to live. So I think you're going to continue to hear those competing talking points as we approach next year's midterms. But worth pointing out that we saw, for instance, North Carolina Senator Tom Tillis, who was up for re-election next year, announced earlier this week that he would not run again. And while he told me that it wasn't specifically because of this bill, he did express some very deep reservations about this package, particularly those changes to Medicaid, as did Susan Collins, another Senate Republican who opposed this package. She, too, faces a decision about whether she's going to run again next year. And, of course, you had Kentucky Senator Rand Paul, who also opposed this package. Of course, in the House, we saw Tom Massey, also a fellow Kentuckian, as well as Congressman Brian Fitzpatrick of Pennsylvania. So the president did face some defections with respect to this bill, even though it was passed along party lines. But certainly it will be in play come next year for the midterms.
Yeah, and it happens so quickly. Nicole, stand by. I'm going to turn now to Scott McFarland. Another deadline looming that we want to talk about is the next round of tariffs that hit next week.
Yeah, the president met this deadline. He wanted to sign the bill into law by July 4th, and here he is on Independence Day doing so. But he's got a deadline of Wednesday, July 9th at midnight Eastern time for tariffs to be re-implemented or raised again. Dozens of countries across the globe that has the prospect of doing what it did back in April when he initially introduced those tariffs, jamming up the stock market, rattling small businesses, potentially triggering inflation. There's an uncertainty between now and Wednesday, and there's been little indication of definitive progress with most of the nations across the globe, and it's uncertain what the president does before that deadline. But as he moves over to sign the bill, let me just note a few things you heard in those remarks, Jerika. A few things we should fact check. He said military recruitment had plummeted during the Biden administration. In fact, last year, 2024, military recruitment was up 12%. He made another baseless claim about rigged elections, again, intimating the 2020 election was rigged. And one thing Democrats have noted, Jerika, he has in the past 48 hours infused more of his remarks with the word hate when responding to Democrats or referencing Democrats. We saw it last night in Iowa, and we saw it again on the South Lawn of the White House on the nation's birthday.
And as he's walking down with his wife, hand in hand, Melania Trump, to sign that bill, I think we have time to speak to Nicole for another quick question, just about reminding us how we got to this point. There was a lot of contentious debate over getting it over the finish line, Nicole.
Yeah, that's right. In fact, we saw, lawmakers here at the Capitol around the clock, both in the Senate and in the House, working on this package well throughout the night, 24 hours plus before they were able to vote on these packages, in large part because there were some last-minute deal-making to try to win over senators. We saw, for instance, in the Senate, Vice President J.D. Vance ultimately had to break the tie on this bill because of those 3 Republicans who opposed it. And of course, in the House, we also saw a lot of delays, even just to get the bill to the point where it could be debated on the House floor. We saw votes held open for hours as behind the scenes you had officials from the White House negotiating with Republicans to try to get them to yes in that final vote. And of course, the president himself was quite engaged on this. He came up to Capitol Hill a number of times to rally lawmakers, to push them forward, to get this bill to his desk by July 4th. And of course, now we see that he got his wish.
Yeah, and it looks like he is signing this bill into law right now. He just picked up the pen. Looks like he's looking for where exactly before they take the picture, and he's signing the bill. The one big, beautiful bill. You see thumbs up, surrounded by people within his cabinet. You see Mike Johnson, the House Speaker. You see Steve Scalise, I believe, off to his left. Scott, if you could tell us what Democrats are saying regarding this photo op.
This is quite an American moment, Jerika. Both parties are quite confident this photo op, the one you're seeing right now, is going to be political nitroglycerin for them in 2026. Republicans think they have a big victory here to tout to voters, to show what their control means. Democrats think this thing is a political loser. It's going to impact millions of families, could cut health care, nutritional assistance for people, just the kind of thing they can use in the midterms to win back the U.S. House and contain this president.
All right, well, on this beautiful sunny day on the south lawn of the White House, everyone seems to be all smiles as the one big beautiful bill was just signed into law. Our coverage will continue on CBS News 24/7, your local news, and tonight on the CBS Evening News. This has been a CBS News special report. I'm Jerika Duncan.
All right, there it is. It is now official. Good evening, everyone. I'm Errol Barnett at the CBS Broadcast Center here in New York City. We've just ended watching a CBS News special report as President Trump officially signs his so-called one big, beautiful bill. It is now the law of the land. President Trump signed his domestic policy legislation during an Independence Day ceremony at the White House, and the president touted the enormity of this measure before signing it into law.
I've never seen people so happy in our country because of that, because so many different groups of people are being taken care of, the military and civilians of all types, jobs of all types. So many things are being added that we wouldn't even have time to discuss them.
CBS News White House reporter Aaron Navarro joins us now from the White House. He's been there all day, baking in the sun. Looks like you have some shade now, Aaron. The president made extended...
A little shade now, yeah.
A bit of shade. The president made extended remarks, taking up most of this hour before signing the bill. A massive political accomplishment for him. Help us understand what his message was before signing the bill.
Yeah, Errol, good to be with you on this 4th of July. I think one of the most notable descriptions from the president came as he started talking about what he has called the, quote, one big beautiful bill. He said it is, quote, the greatest victory yet of his second term. And that's in part because it is kind of the vessel for a lot of the priorities that he shared on the campaign trail when it comes to extending and making permanent his 2017 tax cuts, when it comes to reducing or eliminating taxes on tips or overtime, though that will be temporary, when it comes to increasing funding for the military in terms of at the southern border, when it comes to construction wall building. A lot of the big agenda items are fulfilled through this bill that he just signed around 5:47 a couple minutes ago. And throughout his remarks, he started to make the sales pitch for it to congressional Republicans who are here on the White House South Lawn, acknowledging that that is the next step politically when it comes to this bill now that it is signed. How do members sell it back in their districts when they're in their districts for recess throughout the rest of the summer, going into the fall, and especially going into the 2026 congressional midterms?
Yeah, that also jumped out to me, Aaron. The president at one point saying that, to listeners, that everyone will lie about this bill. He had disagreed with what he said was fear-mongering from critics who said people will die from the bill. He says that's a lie. People will lie about this bill. Everyone's going to live. If you hear anything from Democrats on this bill, it is a lie. Why do you think the president strategically made that point before signing the bill?
Yeah, he said, quote, if you see anything negative, it's all a con job. And that's kind of getting into the defense of this bill. Ever since it passed the House, you've heard kind of the same line from congressional Democrats that it'll hurt Medicaid access for people, that it'll hurt food assistance programs such as SNAP, and that it'll really only benefit the wealthy, the higher class Americans in terms of income. This is the president, and we saw a little bit of this during his speech in Iowa last night, getting ahead of that, trying to make the argument to Republicans saying, this is the, quote, most popular bill ever signed, trying to convince them, if they weren't already, that this is aligned with the president's campaign promises and that they can win politically on this. It'll be, a test of who is right in those November 2026 elections. But, throughout his remarks, the president thanked the congressional Republicans, naming a lot of the congressional Republican leaders who helped get this bill passed, whip the votes, though we've been told that President Trump really put a lot of political capital himself into it, making sure to call members, especially on Wednesday, the day right before this bill passed the House.
So, Aaron, let's drill into the healthcare portion of this. There's so many pieces to this bill. It's 900 pages. There are so many aspects. But when it comes to people who rely on Medicaid, for example, what changes will they see to the program? I know it's dependent on where exactly they are in the country, but what does this bill do to Medicaid?
Yeah, in part, it really depends where you are in the country, because what this bill indicates is that the federal government will spend less in terms of, buying into and the cost sharing of Medicaid, Medicare programs, putting the onus on states, which could really, vary if you're in a Republican state, a Democratic state, if you're in a state that has already expanded access to Medicaid versus those that have not. There's also the change on Medicaid when it comes to work requirements. Those have been made tighter. As the White House has argued, it's to combat, quote, waste, fraud, and abuse. This could really impact some of those, that get Medicaid that are unable to have a job or are unable to, fill the hours requirement that are in this bill. It makes things a little bit harder for some of them. But one thing that's important to note, a lot of those Medicaid changes will happen after the 2026 midterms due to the timing of this bill.
Really interesting detail there, Aaron, that those changes won't hit until after the midterms. Aaron Navarro on the White House South Lawn for us, just moments after President Trump signs his cornerstone legislation into law. Thank you for that, Aaron. CBS News Justice correspondent Scott MacFarlane joins us now from the White House. I believe you're on the North Lawn there. Much quieter place, at least when it comes to music. You probably have news correspondents next to you making a bit of noise. Scott, help us understand some of the fact checks. You had your typical Trumpian hyperbolic language. It's the best piece of legislation ever passed. But when it comes to military recruitment, for example, I heard you do this fact check during our special report. What did the president say that went outside the bounds of what's factual?
Yeah, Errol, there was the tenor and the content at some point of a campaign rally in those remarks from the president on the South Lawn. Even though it's the July 4th holiday, military is present, and he was doing a governmental action of signing a bill into law, you heard some campaign rhetoric, some of it just baseless. He again referenced rigged elections, again alluding to his defeat in 2020 in an election that was not rigged. He also said that military recruitment imploded during the Biden administration and has been restored this year in the Trump administration. Our CBS News reporting found military recruitment was up significantly in 2024, in the last year of the Biden presidency. You also heard him say in so many words, this is the most popular bill ever signed. There is no public polling indicating this is a popular bill. Largely the polling that's out there shows there is some consternation and cynicism from the public about this bill, and many people have no idea what's in this thing. So to call it popular right now is premature, but that's part of what they're doing here today. This signing ceremony, this triumphant image and triumphant moment, could galvanize support for the legislation as it's implemented over the coming years. But both parties think this is a winner right now. Both parties think this photo op, this signing ceremony, will be a winner in next year's critical midterm elections. Democrats think this is an albatross and that they're going to get a repeat of 2018, where Democrats made enormous inroads and seized control of the U.S. House in the first midterm of the president's first term.
And that is Scott MacFarlane reporting from the North Lawn of the White House for us. Scott, thank you very much. President Trump's cornerstone legislation has now been signed into law. What does this mean for you and the country? We'll have more on that after this short break. This is CBS News 24/7.
We're NCIS. You guys want to see me do the cha-cha slide?
Can we get to the body, please?
Right.
Oh, what's got you so punchy lately?
Not punchy, passionate.
This is a great team for what?
We're NCIS.
NCIS, all episodes now streaming on Paramount Plus and returning CBS Fall.
No matter how you start your day, one thing is clear.
Actually, two things. Pretty sure it's three.
Guys, whether it's news, money, health, or wellness, sports, movies, or even inspiration.
Clearly, CBS Mornings is the place to be. That's like 7 things.
Okay, clearly, I'm bad at math, always been. Clearly, CBS Mornings, weekdays at 7 on CBS.
We can start whenever you're ready.
Ready?
Yeah. No, stop! Wrong pedal, wrong other pedal! Oh! He's in a wheelchair! What do you want? Come on, stop the car! That's a kid! Kid! Give it to me. Did I pass?
Now serving 942.
Go to the ends of the earth.
We'll hit the heights.
A great adventure together.
And reach for the stars.
Star power. I like it.
So cool.
But wait, there's more.
Experience thought-provoking.
Something that's undeniable.
With mindfulness.
Innovative.
Magical.
It's like being a child.
And truly original reporting.
God, you do your research. I tell a good story.
Because there's always something new under the sun on CBS Sunday morning.
Hi, CBS. I'm Tom Ellis. I can't wait for you to see my new show, CIA, coming to CBS Fall.
What happens when the world's best journalists come together?
Write a prescription for the healing of America.
You get the stories of America every weeknight. You get the all-new CBS Evening News.
When everything's on the line, real heroes rise to the occasion. Or die trying.
We're firefighters. We're gonna find a way to get you out of here.
We take the hits together.
We're on the same team.
I'm right here with you, no matter what.
I would never leave you hanging in the deep end.
This place is a way of giving you new family.
Fire Country. All episodes now streaming on Paramount Plus and returning CBS Fall.
I can see clearly now. Ooh, gonna be a bright, sunshiny day.
That's right.
Money Watch is your no-nonsense guide to taking control of your finances. Hi, I'm Jill Schlesinger. Listen to Money Watch wherever you get your podcasts.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Errol Barnett at the CBS Broadcast Center here in New York City. After weeks of Democratic resistance and Republican infighting, President Trump's sweeping legislation he calls a big, beautiful bill is now the law of the land. President Trump signed his domestic policy legislation during this Independence Day ceremony at the White House a short time ago. President Trump touted the enormity of this measure before signing it. CBS News White House reporter Aaron Navarro watched this happen from the White House South Lawn. He's continuing to report on this from the White House today. Aaron, what was President Trump's message to the crowd there and to folks at home before this law goes into effect?
Yeah, he began his remarks here to the crowd by noting the B-2 Spirit bombers that did a flyover just above the White House as the Star-Spangled Banner was playing. And those aircrafts are notable in particular because they're the same ones, or same model at least, that were used in American strikes on Iranian nuclear sites just 2 weeks ago. And President Trump spent some time talking about that, saying it was, quote, total obliteration of those sites, as he has said before. Noted how some of the members of those flights of the air base in Missouri were here in the crowd, asked them to raise their hands if they wanted to. We saw a handful do that, while he joked that many of them want to keep their identities hidden. But primarily towards the end, the second half of his remarks, he talked about what he has called the, quote, one big beautiful bill. He referred to it as, quote, the greatest victory yet of his second term, a sign that he has put a lot of political capital into getting this bill passed, and another acknowledgement that this bill has a lot of the priorities that he mentioned on the campaign trail when it comes to increasing spending at the southern border, when it comes to making his 2017 tax cuts permanent, as well as his pitch to voters, especially in the battleground state like Nevada, that he will eliminate taxes on tips. This bill does that in part, though at least temporarily, but this was really a pitch not just to the crowd of military family members here and members of the military at the White House, but as well to congressional Republicans who will now have to sell this bill when they go back to their districts later this summer and into the fall.
And as you're speaking to us, Aaron, we were just looking at footage of President Trump, joined by First Lady Melania Trump, greeting guests there at the White House South Lawn as their Independence Day celebrations continue. Aaron Navarro, thank you very much. We want to jump over now to congressional correspondent Nicole Killian on Capitol Hill, watching all of this. And Nicole, I want to pick up on something Aaron left on there, which was that messaging is next. Democrats will pounce on this, and President Trump tried to kind of get ahead of this and say they're going to lie and say this will kill a lot of people. Republicans will have to sell this back in their districts. So what is in the bill itself that each side will try to characterize?
Well, I think, Republicans will clearly use the centerpiece of this package, which is the extension of President Trump's 2017 tax cuts, as their main selling point, that this is putting money back into people's pockets, and this is really going to fuel growth in the economy. In fact, that was a point that Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent made to me when he was here on Capitol Hill trying to rally Senate Republicans to support this package. He said, I think you'll see a lot of economic growth in the third and fourth quarters of this year if we're able to get this bill done, in part because it makes many of the business tax credits in this package permanent, which he argues and Republicans have argued will provide more stability and certainty for businesses. Obviously, there are a lot of tax credits for families. We saw an increase, for instance, in the child tax credit, upwards of $2,200. It includes these new Trump savings accounts, if you will, where families who have newborns will get $1,000, and that is something that they can put towards investing in their child and in their future, whether that's education or other needs. And then, of course, the rest of the individual tax cuts were also made permanent, some of them temporary, but, nonetheless, this is something that will likely impact a number of Americans. What we hear Democrats more specifically campaigning on, of course, and what they made the arguments against in this package, which is why they unanimously oppose them, are these cuts to Medicaid and food assistance programs like SNAP. The Congressional Budget Office projects that upwards of 11.8 million people could potentially lose their health coverage if this bill becomes law. So that has been a point that Democrats have made, even suggesting even more than that could be impacted. You also have, with respect to the food assistance programs as well, because a lot of the burden will shift onto states to implement these programs and to carry more of the cost for these programs, that is something that we have heard will have a negative impacts, and more specifically on the Medicaid front, too. We have heard Democrats make the argument that rural hospitals could close, in addition to people potentially losing their health coverage. So those are the arguments that Democrats not only made in the debate on this bill, but that they say they will now take on the road, as well as they campaign against this package, while Republicans campaign in support of it. So those competing arguments are going to continue in the weeks and months ahead.
And Nicole, I think what's really challenging for people watching this is they won't really know who to believe until the bill really makes its way through the system. And that will take time. It's not going to impact anyone's 4th of July weekend. Can you help us understand some of the timing when it comes to Medicaid cuts and SNAP cuts? Because I understand that some of it won't actually happen until after the midterm elections of next year, on which both sides will be campaigning because of this bill.
Yeah, and that's really an important point to make, because the president's tax cuts expire at the end of this year. That is part of why Republicans and the president were making such a big push to get this done as soon as possible, even though this July 4th deadline was pretty arbitrary. But obviously they needed some legislation to continue the tax credit, so that part of the package will take effect as soon as this year. But as you point out, some of these changes to Medicaid and food assistance will likely be phased in over time. So, for instance, these new work requirements that Republicans have been talking about, in making sure that able-bodied individuals qualify for Medicaid only if they work 80 hours per month, 20 hours per week, volunteer or study in some capacity, those don't take effect until the end of 2026, which would be after the midterms. And worth pointing out that actually in the original form of the bill, when it first cleared the House, or right before it cleared the House, there was a push to have those requirements phased in even later, but it was conservative Republicans who wanted that moved up. And so now, even though it takes effect right after the midterms, nonetheless, people may not feel that impact right away.
Yeah, folks should certainly remember that as maybe some families debate this over the weekend. Nicole Killian, thanks so much. We appreciate your red, white, and blue attire. Before I let you go, what would you put on the grill this weekend? I'm asking everybody.
Oh. Well, I'm a watermelon person myself, so I like to stay cool. I make
like
strawberry pies on the 4th of July, so that would be my thing, something cool, because it's very hot here in Washington right now.
I love it. Appreciate you, Nicole. Stay cool this weekend. Thanks for your time.
You bet.
We are following breaking news for you at this moment. There's been massive flooding in Kerr County, Texas. Several people have been killed, and according to new information that we have, more than 20 children at a summer camp are currently missing. The state's lieutenant governor has just shared the latest on this deadly flooding. Let's listen.
Drones, 9 rescue teams, swimmers in the water, rescuing adults and children out of trees. We have 400 to 500 people on the ground from all of our various units, and